I'm Regina Matson-Bryant, and I'm honoring Captain Don E. Perkins II. Don was a Navy pilot, and he graduated with top honors at a time when black pilots were not really present in the military, and he graduated with top honors. And his friends who went through AOCS with him were convinced that he was never going to make it because he had 1% body fat and would sink to the bottom of the pool. And he wouldn't give up until he got it. And he made it, and he became a pilot. And as he said, you know, when I was a baby eating dirt in Willacoochee, Georgia, I would look up and see the planes and say, I'm going to do that someday. He didn't know how, but he knew he was going to do it. I met Don in December of 1981. My husband was going through flight training in Kingsville, Texas, and all I knew about Don, AKA the Black Duck, because he was 6'2" and had a booming voice like James Earl Jones, and all the flight students were terrified of him. And my husband came home and said, one of my instructors is coming over for Sunday dinner. He's tired of eating leftovers. And I didn't think anything about it. And I said, well, which instructor? And he said, oh, the Black Duck. I was like, what? And so I made Sunday dinner. And then he promptly laid down on the couch, and I was convinced I had poisoned him. So I was leaning over him, and I said, and then he said, what are you doing? I said, checking to make sure you're still breathing. He said, oh, I'm checking for light leaks. That's what he would say when he would close his eyes, holes in his eyes, and that's when I met him. And thereafter, every Sunday, he was there. And the one time that I lost my mind, because my husband was supposed to call when he got to San Diego and didn't call till midnight, Perk calmed down a young Navy wife and had him march the flight line to say, what time is dinner on Sunday? And that's how I found out that my husband was okay, and after that we became really good friends. Don was a young pilot that had finally gotten hired with an airline company out of Nevada, and then he was able to be hired by US Air, and US Air had a plane waiting for him when he finished one of his flights, and they flew him back to Jacksonville to be with me. And when he showed up, I couldn't believe it. And he just took control, and he sat there, and in order to call off the search for the missing plane to get the paperwork started, you had to sign your name on a piece of paper. And by signing that piece of paper, that meant you were calling off the search. And that was not something I wanted to do. However, Don, with his booming voice, said, you will do this because this is what Donnie would have wanted you to do. And like I said, he was always there. You know, years later when I took Jared to the Naval Academy, I knew I wasn't going to be able to handle it well. And I said, please don't let me embarrass myself or Jared. And when my son started to march in, I started to lunge, and next thing I know, he pulled my hair and said, stand back, put your hand up, and smile and wave, because he's going to cut his eyes and look at you. And sure enough, Jared cut his eyes over there, and I'm standing there with a smile on my face, waving. And that's how we did it. And it was interesting because that weekend, I saw two men kind of circling us. And I asked them, I said, do you know my friend? And they said, no, we don't think so. And I said, were you in the Navy? They said, yes, we were pilots. And I said, oh, I said, did you go through Kingsville? And all of a sudden it dawned on him that that was the Black Duck. And years later, he still could lock them up with fear. And when we dropped my daughter off in 2014, the same thing happened again. And I knew immediately when they were circling, because of his voice and his demeanor, that they could remember, but they weren't quite sure because they were still terrified of him all these years later. And he was the instructor that was given the students that nobody else wanted to fly with because they had scared their flight instructors. But no fear of death, which was stamped on the outside of their folders. And even though he threw clipboards and hit them on the head, with certain things and made him kiss the ground when they got out of the plane, they still remembered him. And he's still here. Yes, he would fly over Willacoochee, Georgia, and his teacher, his elementary teacher, would see a plane come over and circle low, and she'd bring the kids out to show them, this is somebody who I taught. And he would go there for career day and speak to them about, you can do anything you set your mind to, don't be hampered, you can do this. He was a lover and a giver. He loved everybody and was willing to give to everything. He had 12 Navy and Marine Corps flight students. He pinned, the last thing that he did in his life was pin my daughter's wings on her, because he would put her in the cockpit, but he wouldn't let me come in the cockpit. That was his thing with my daughter Caitlin. And years later, when she, I was crying because I didn't want her to be a pilot, and he just said, you'd have to suck it up. And she wanted him to pin her wings on her. And that was the one thing he did right just before he died. Pinned her wings on her. And now American Airlines has put his name on a jet, the brand new jet. And he's going to be the face of the cancer campaign for American Airlines. So he's an incredible man. And he was one of the youngest flight instructors ever. And to be a black man was something unheard of. But years later, these men still feared him, that voice. And they said they wouldn't have become pilots had it not been for him, because they were some of the students that nobody else wanted to fly with.